Guys, welcome to Real Classic Film Reviews and welcome to a classic movie review of 1964's The Train, starring Burt Lancaster, Paul Scofield and Jeanne Moreau. Now this was directed by John Frankenheimer and it's set in the final days of World War II and it follows a group of French resistance fighters trying to stop a Nazi colonel from stealing priceless works of art on a train bound for Germany. Now Burt Lancaster stars as a railway inspector / resistance fighter turned reluctant hero who ends up willing to risk everything to stick it to the Nazis and also preserve a nation's culture as war rages around the world. Now this is nothing short of one of the best movies of the 1960s. It's a war movie but also a kind of spy thriller, a heist movie but also quite a ferocious action film. Let's take a look.
Do you think there will be sabotage attempts on this train?
I'm a railroad man, not a prophet.
Prophecy is not required, only determination. This train will get through to Germany. You agree, don't you, Lebish?
So 1964's The Train was loosely inspired by factual events recounted in the 1961 book Le Front de l'Art by Rose Valland, and it is quite a simple story on the surface. The tale of a small group of resistance fighters doing all they can to stop a train moving from France into Germany in the August of 1944 as the Allies are close to liberating Paris. You see, we have the German Colonel von Waldheim, played by Paul Scofield, a guy who is clearly a lover of fine art and he's intent on transporting hundreds of celebrated paintings by famous artists, obviously looted by the Nazis, from out of France before the Allies get there. And Waldheim has to overcome bureaucratic delays from his own army, who of course have little interest in art and need all the resources they can muster for their retreat.
I don't share your enthusiasm for art. Even if I did, it would not be centered on this degenerate trash. Nor would I expect priority over vitally needed war transport.
Now, meanwhile, arts curator Mademoiselle Villard, played by Suzanne Flon, appeals to the underground cell led by rail yard manager Lebiche, played by Burt Lancaster, to stall the train's progress until the Allies arrive. But Lebiche's group has seen too many casualties and he's got very little interest in risking more for boxes of paintings.
We started with 18. Like your paintings, mademoiselle, we couldn't replace them. For certain things, we take the risk. But I won't waste lives on paintings.
But they wouldn't be wasted.
Now, it's only when one of his close friends, an old gruff engineer, Papa Boule, played by Michael Simon, risks his life to save the arts train, that Lebiche and his team decide to risk everything for one last mission. And what follows is basically an elaborate, almost Mission Impossible style ruse to try and keep the train in France. A plan that involves sending the train deep into France by changing the names of the stations along the way, as well as creating diversions, train crashes and various other acts of wartime sabotage. And of course, at the centre of it all is Burt Lancaster as Paul Lebiche, a French railway inspector and member of the resistance. Now, if there was ever an actor born to operate heavy machinery whilst covered in soot and grease and still look heroic, it was him. And Lancaster, of course, insisted on doing all of his own stunts, climbing onto moving trains, leaping between carts and sprinting across the tracks. Now, I'm not saying that he's Tom Cruise levels of stunt work commitment, but of course Lancaster had been a circus acrobat since the age of about 9, so he knew his way around a climb and a fall. Now, one of my favourite aspects of The Train is how it looks. Frankenheimer shot this film in stark black and white, which wasn't so much a nostalgic choice, but a practical one. He wanted to show the grit and the weight of the machinery, and I think he's right that colour would have softened it somehow. Here, every ball, every puff of steam, every greasy, oily surface feels and looks tactile. There's a kind of physical reality to the movie that's nearly extinct today. No CGI, no green screen. Here the explosions are real, the trains are real, and when one derails in spectacular crash, you get a sense of the weight behind it. Frankenheimer wrecking full-size locomotives for his art with a small production team is a feat that I assume would baffle many a modern filmmaker. Now, another great aspect of The Train is that it isn't really about whether all these priceless paintings get saved. I think it's about whether they're actually worth saving. Von Waldheim sees the art as something that will outlast the war and maybe even give a bit of meaning to it all in the face of defeat. Lebiche, on the other hand, couldn't care less about what a load of old canvases mean when his friends and innocent civilians are dying to protect them. And the great argument of the film, I think, is that tension between art and human life, or humanity against tyranny, and not being too spoilerific, but The Train's ultimate genius is that it's never sentimental. Lancaster's Lebiche doesn't have some epiphany where he suddenly appreciates Monet's Impressionism or the Cubist movement. He's just a guy doing the right thing, basically because someone has to. And it's maybe an irony too that the art is saved not by those who understand and appreciate it, but by those who simply refuse to let the bad guys win. So The Train was originally set to be directed by Arthur Penn, who by all accounts wanted a more psychological and character-driven story. Now Lancaster, who had final say, replaced him with Frankenheimer, who he'd worked with previously on 62's Birdman of Alcatraz and 64's 7 Days in May. And even though Frankenheimer was brought in to inject momentum into proceedings, the film still manages to be more intelligent than most war movies of its era. The Germans here aren't cartoon villains, for one thing. Scofield's von Waldheim is a cultured, quite articulate dude in his own warped way. His obsession with art is similar to Labiche's stubbornness. Both men just can't let it go and engage in a great battle of wills.
Here's your prize, Labiche. Some of the greatest paintings in the world. A painting means as much to you as a string of pearls to an ape.
Now it's quite funny because I don't always think of The Train as a war movie. It is, of course. It's just outside of a few air raids, there are no battlefield heroics or big patriotic speeches here. Just men fiddling with switches, misdirecting trains, sabotaging tracks and bluffing Nazis with a kind of working class disdain. It's war as an engineering problem or a battle over rail schedules rather than territory. So by 1964, the big Hollywood war epic was already mutating into something else. The war movies from here on would dispense mostly with that tally-ho flag-waving simplicity that was a bit of a knee-jerk reaction to the horrors of World War II. Here, of course, there's no swelling orchestral score punctuating victory, just Lancaster surrounded by corpses and crates of art that suddenly seem a lot less precious. A more ambiguous, uncomfortably honest ending for an audience knee-deep in civil rights demonstrations, student activism and escalating tensions in Vietnam. Now Frankenheimer's next film would be the excellent Rock Hudson movie Seconds in 1966, before his first colour movie that same year, the hugely ambitious Grand Prix. And if you watch his movies from Birdman to Manchurian Candidate onwards throughout the 60s, you can see his style of documentary-like precision punctuated with blunt flashes of action. Now he wasn't initially interested in making The Train, but Lancaster had a faith in him to deliver a war movie not just about bombs, bullets and bravado, but about the act of resistance itself, not just against those nasty Nazis, but against the idea that anything worth saving comes easily, whether it's art or people's freedom. And if that sounds a little bit too serious for you, then it does also have trains that explode, fly off the rails and smash into each other, so win-win. Go check it out.
Listen, you idiots. The war'll be over in a few days. Now leave it alone.
You get caught up in something, you can't leave it alone. You know how it is.